Stewie2K, one of the absolute legends of the North American FPS scene, has had one of the most interesting careers in history. From becoming NA's first major winners with Tarek in Counter-Strike, to being washed and trying to make a career in Valorant, to winning IEM Dallas with G2 as a stand-in only months after rejoining the esport that created him. The story of Stewie2K's career has been so much fun to watch, so I decided to give my Valorant audience an idea what had happened to him since leaving Valorant. It's honestly one of the most unexpected stories since Evil Geniuses won Champions. But if you want to check out more deep dives of players and teams in Valorant, as well as other top esports, as I'm looking to bring more exciting storylines from around the esports world to your attention, no matter what game you're primarily watching. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss out on a single video like this one. So before I dive into Stewie2K's time struggling through Valorant and the fairy tale run that occurred after he left the game, I need to touch on the reputation and legacy he left in CSGO before jumping ship to Valorant to reinvent himself. Stewie started his esports career back in 2015 at the age of 17 with SKDC, where he cut his teeth in B-tier regional events, where they couldn't crack the top 4. But during this time, it was clear right away that Stewie, as a rifler, for these early teams was a menace. And after spending time on his second pro team, Splice, which would eventually become Mad Lions, he was picked up by one of the premier American orgs, Cloud9. But while fans knew of his fragging skill, they also knew the reputation he had been gaining early on in his career. As with Splice, he left on bad terms, with him not playing in their matches in the 2016 NA Challengers, and causing the community to call him unprofessional. And to further hurt his reputation, there are rumors that he was a difficult teammate to play with. So Cloud9 fans viewed this move as destructive for a team just kinda learning themselves. But little did they know that 2 years later, Stewie, along with Tarek, Skadoodle, Automatic, and Rush, would lift a major trophy at the Boston Major, the first by a North American team in CSGO, with such a legendary run that it cemented Stewie as the hero of the region, which led him to success after leaving C9 later that year, as after struggling in his time with MIBR, he helped Team Liquid win the second ever Intel Grand Slam, which is granted when you win 4 S-tier events in a 10-event window, which is so hard to do. But after that peak, it felt like his career was slowing down, with Team Liquid never really reaching that level of success again, all the way into the pandemic, with Stewie at the time during the online era of 2020 and 2021, looking to not really belong anymore at the top of the CSGO scene. So in 2022, after failing to finish high in any events with EG, he decided to leave the game he had been playing competitively for 7 years, and took a step back, officially retiring on June 28th to focus on streaming, which he did for the rest of the year, amassing a supportive audience while letting his personality shine, which was always his strong suit. But Stewie will always be a competitor at heart. So not even 6 months after leaving pro gaming, he returned, but this time in Valorant. Like so many ex-CSGO players, he was going to try his hand at the game and see if he could revive his career in a different scene. So along with friends Wardell, Brax, Teague, and current T1 player Rossi, they formed the Nation, where they would compete to make a spot in the North American Challengers League. And it would not be easy, as there were only 6 spots open to compete in Tier 2, and the talent in North America was at an all-time high, with new orgs with experienced talent filling so many teams. So they would have to really grind through these early matches to even have a chance to qualify for the main event. But Stewie had become a champion in one game, and he was determined with this team of real talent to do it again, as he didn't just put together a meme team like we saw the year prior with Zombs and Sinatra's untamable beasts, but rather a team that was determined to make a name for themselves in the game, and possibly be picked up by an established org to compete the rest of the year in Tier 2. And that's because for Stewie, Wardell, and Brax, their esports career really did depend on it, as none of them had been competing at the same highs they had earlier, with Stewie feeling it the worst. So in the open qualifiers, they needed to make it happen right away. But the real question was, what role fits Stewie the best? As his role as an entry fragger didn't work the same as it did in Counter-Strike. So he steered away from that in favor of the Initiator, which makes perfect sense, as it allows him to play closer to CS, with a clear flashing ability that allowed him to set up duels for himself, and let his expert aim take over against lesser opponents, which worked for them against the free agent teams, making it all the way to the qualifying match to make it to Split 1. They had 2 chances to secure it and set themselves up in Tier 2 for the remainder of the year, making Stewie2K a bona fide Valorant pro, competing against the likes of the Guard, M80, and G2. But that's when they completely choked, as after winning 13-1 against Breakthrough to be within 1 map of qualification, they lost Haven 9-13, even with Stewie dominating, and Ascent 10-13 to fall down to a deciding match against Dark Ratio, who they had won against earlier in the event. But after a heartbreaking overtime loss after being up 8-4 at the half, things looked in dire straits, and while they were able to survive another comeback on Bind, they lost yet another 8-4 lead to be eliminated from qualifying for Challengers, with Stewie having his worst match in the entire event, being a non-factor in all 3 maps. And while this was a difficult loss on their part, this wasn't their only chance this season, as they had the last chance qualifiers to sneak into Challengers in the final 2 spots. And yet again, they looked to be on another level against the first few teams they faced, destroying 99's strength to make it to the semifinals. Again, so close to qualifying, but they needed to face the Squirrel Squad, led by Adder and Governor, who were on the rise all event long, as they came out swinging with a nice comeback like Unfractured, and a 4-round win streak to finish off a close breeze to push Stewie to their final chance in the season. And again, in their critical match against Sonics, Stewie didn't look like he really belonged at any higher level, as the game just didn't look to fit into his strengths that made him so successful in Counter-Strike, with his stats early in the events compared to his team's losses are staggering, showing that organized teams with at least a little professional experience in Valorant will shut down his great technical skill, with now him and the rest of the nation now forced to look for other options for the remainder of 2023, as there were no more chances to make Tier 2 Valorant. So with that, he slowly moved away from Valorant, as he had no real goal with the game anymore, as his next chance to try and compete was a whole year away, eons for a pro gaming career. But that's when the hype he needed to get back into Counter-Strike happened, with CS2 being announced, and while fans don't see much of a difference about it, it provided Stewie the push to start playing again on stream for the remainder of the year. And by the end of 2023, he couldn't keep himself away from competing, as he joined Mythic with a bunch of NA veterans. And while they didn't finish high in the ESL Challengers League, he regained the desire to continue to compete in Counter-Strike. But it really didn't look like any major teams desired to have him compete with them, as his stock wasn't the same high it was back in 2018, so he could only really find stand-in positions going into this season, first standing in with Legacy in the eSports World Cup qualifier, where he started to look better as an entry fragger, helping them finish in the top 3, then joining a world-class G2 team, with young superstar Monacy and veteran legend Nico, where it looked clear Stewie would never touch the stage with them. But that's when the stars aligned for Stewie2K to make his return to Counter-Strike greatness, 6 years after first reaching his peak. After coming so close multiple times this season, finishing in the top 6 in every major event, G2 hasn't been able to break through to win another major/master, as either Mouse or Vase would stop them in the upper rounds, always finishing just short of making the top 3. But after qualifying for IEM Dallas, they looked poised to take another crack at the top spot. But that's when their IGL Hooksy decided to miss the event due to personal conflicts, leaving G2 to quickly change their plans just 2 weeks before this huge event began. So Stewie2K jumped at the opportunity, ready to prove he can still compete at the top of CS, but it would be difficult, as superstar Nico would now have to IGL, leaving their still young Opper, Monacy to even have more responsibility as the tip of the spear for the team, as they had no idea how good or bad Stewie would play as the explosive entry they needed, after being out a true top LAN play since before COVID. But this is when Stewie2K and G2 shocked the entire FPS world, going on one of the most improbable runs in recent history, to finally break through and win the event against the dominant Vitality, who are being led by possibly the greatest player in the world right now, in ZywOo. And for my non-CS fans, I'm going to break down the most important and interesting parts of this legendary run. So they started off the event winning a close 13-10 map against Team Falcon, with Stewie clearly struggling to get used to playing on the big stage, especially now as they would be facing Team Vitality with ZywOo, who would have a field day with them if they weren't careful. So everyone in G2 would need to step up, especially Stewie. But 2 maps later, it looked like they would bomb out of the event, being destroyed on Dust and Anubis, with Stewie yet again struggling to keep up. Everything looked helpless for this team, especially now facing elimination against a team that had been slaying them in the most recent tournaments, even when they were at full strength. But that's when everything changed for G2 and Stewie, as he knew it was now or never to save his career, so he gave it his all. Picking up a map high 4 first kills, playing his role great to set up Monsi for another monster map to pick up their map pick. While they're unable to convert Nuke, they're able to run away with map 3 with Nico and Hunter able to pull their team across in the end of their defensive side, being successful in 7 of their last 8 rounds to escape. But they were nowhere near safe, as they would now have to face a powerful Team Liquid team who had been trying to shake up their roster this year, with new additions Twist and Cadian, who have had very successful careers for themselves, hoping to give this team a much needed boost. But so far it hadn't worked as well as they hoped, so they were hungry to eliminate this G2 team and take the final spot in the playoffs. It'd be yet again another do or die moment for Stewie, and he would need at least one more flash of greatness in a map to get by, as he can be the difference maker for them. But it didn't start off well, with them losing 11-7 lead, with Stewie having a decent match, but Twist went off to win the first map. G2 were able to move it to a map 3 with the win on Inferno, a map they just understood better than anyone in the event, forcing everything to come down to Nuke. And it went back and forth through the first half, with no one being able to take a lead, until Team Liquid were able to eke out a few defending rounds, with Yakinder, who was having an insane event, shut down Monasi in the most critical moments, putting Stewie and G2 to the edge of elimination. But this is when they dug their heels in and refused to go down without a fight, something Stewie had been doing since his Cloud9 days. And in an important round 21, G2 took advantage of Team Liquid pushing too far forward, giving them the easy kills they needed to swing the momentum in their favor, as Team Liquid would have to save their weapons in the next round, tying the map. But G2 weren't done, as Stewie entries onto site perfectly, opening up the round when they needed him the most, leading them to win the last 2 rounds to clutch the map and survive this nail-biter moving into the playoffs. And this is when they really went on a roll, as they shocked FaZe in 2 straight dominant maps, then defeating a surging 9Z team, with Stewie holding his own with the most assists in the match to finally break through the barrier they couldn't reach all season. Stewie as a stand-in would now be reaching the grand finals of IEM Dallas, but they would have to beat the team that knocked them down to elimination earlier in the event, Team Vitality. But this team is a much different team than they were just earlier in the week, as there was no way to separate these 2 teams all throughout Inferno, leading all the way to overtime, where it looked all to be done for G2, as Team Vitality won all their attacking rounds, meaning that either G2 would have to do the same just to move it to a second overtime, or lose their map pick, putting them in a deep hole for the rest of the finals. So the pressure was on for Stewie to entry for his team, something he had been struggling with all map. But this is why Stewie and G2 were destined to win, as he pulled off not only the 3 attacking rounds they needed to force a second overtime, but were able to get 2 more on their attacking half, only needing 2 retakes on their defending side to go 1-0 in the series, putting Vitality now on the back foot, where they had to truly fight on their own map pick of Anubis, which led to another overtime, but they learned from Inferno and shut it down right away to move it to an exciting map 3 to decide if this fairy tale run with stand-in Stewie2K would reign supreme, or leave him with a huge what if. So Stewie, along with the rest of G2, especially Monasi, played their hearts out as they started to snowball rounds in their defending side, as Monasi shut down ZywOo completely, making a true statement that he's the best player in the world right now. And with a confidence that we hadn't seen since before COVID for Stewie, he helped shut down Vitality in the final rounds to pull them across the finish line to win the series and event, with him now looking to be at the top of the world, once again being ranked a top 4 team in the world, with Stewie completing his miraculous return, being the talk all across eSports 6 years after his huge Boston Major win. And with that, Stewie yet again is a Counter-Strike champion, after such a turbulent few years that saw him retire, switch esports, and return lifting another trophy. So what's next for Stewie? Well, there's no indication that he would continue with G2, especially as well his stock as a name/brand is very high. His individual play wasn't top tier caliber long term, as while he had moments where he looked elite, he definitely wasn't as consistent game in and out that'd be required to continue to be successful. But after this win, he'll definitely be having offers to be a permanent member on a good org, where he'd yet again be competing at a higher level than just a few months ago. His career in Counter-Strike has definitely been jump-started yet again.